it's like you were floating through the moon. You know, like it was like going through a crater on the moon or something, because you're just looking at the rock formations, the colors, the blue, the hues of the blue. So you've got these amazing gradients of blue going up as the depths change. And then towards the end, like there's the algae. So there's these bright, bright greens.
Welcome to Experiences You Should Have, your how-to guide for amazing experiences. I'm your host, Gail Manasco, and today we are talking about a variety of topics, including diving Silfra in Iceland with the beautiful Emma Lovell from Lovely Travels podcast. I just did want to take note that we are in a really crazy time in history right now. We have the coronavirus, a global pandemic. We're also right in the middle of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I just wanted to take a moment and state that, yes, Black Lives Matter. We are here. We are listening. We are in an insane time right now, but we are listening. We support you, and we support you peacefully. And Emma and I both talk about in the podcast, like, we have experienced white privilege, and I am a white woman, and I do know that it's helped me get ahead in some things, and I can only hope that everyone is treated the same, and I can only hope and express the hope for equality in the world, and I know that racial bias exists, and I wish it didn't. So I know this is a heavy topic, but I did want to state this to my listeners, that I am here and I am listening. With that said, we're going to change topics here, and we're going to go to Iceland today. You know, I feel like with so much going on that maybe you just want to escape to another planet. And while you might not be able to go to the International Space Station right now, you can escape underwater. And we're talking about a very peaceful experience today. We're talking about diving the Silfra Fissure in Iceland between two continental plates. And we're here with Emma Lovell. And she has a brand new podcast, Lovely Travels Podcast, and she has a mission to visit every UN recognized country in the world. And I believe by the time she's 40. So I know there's a lot going on in the world. I really hope she can complete that goal. But let's get on with the interview with Emma and talk about Iceland and Black Lives Matter. Welcome, Emma, to the podcast. This is so exciting to have you.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm very honored to be a guest.
Yes, from Lovely Travels. And you just launched the Lovely Travels podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. It's been a bit of an evolution. I've had a blog for 11 years, and then my name is Lovely because I'm lovely by name, lovely by nature. But actually, my surname is Lovell, so I added the Y because I'm in branding. But
yes,
so people call me Lovely, and it's really good when I'm traveling, actually, because I say, just call me Lovely, and they remember. So. I sort of went, I started an Instagram specifically for the travels because I decided on a mission to visit every UN recognized country in the world. So that's 195 countries. I only decided on that mission in July 2019 and sort of went, oh, well, lovely travels. That makes sense. And I made my Instagram. And then my friend and I were, as part of the mission, we were going to do 7 countries in like 4 days, which would have been really quite tiring. But we were in Europe, so it's kind of possible. Some of them are very close together. But we ended up adjusting it, and we did 4 countries in 4 days. And on that trip, we were like, let's listen to podcasts. That's a great thing to do in the car. You bring some podcasts, I'll bring some podcasts. And while we were chatting in the car, we thought we could do this. We could have a podcast and be podcast hosts. And I said it was a funny little haha that was like, no, that's actually a really good idea, and it would be a great way to support the mission and to share the stories. And I love the conversational format. So yeah, I just wanted people to feel like they were jumping in the car with us or on the road with us and coming on the journey. So yeah, and we launched in May.
Oh, wow. So welcome to the podcasting land, and listeners out there, please subscribe to Lovely Travels Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a journey, and it's a journey. And what an interesting time. I mean, you made this goal to visit all these countries in 2019, and now we're in 2020, and 2020 is pretty crazy right now. It's absolutely crazy. And right now, yes, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And I'm not sure how it is in Australia right now, but here in the United States, we're in a crazy time of Black Lives Matter. And yes, Black Lives Matter. And I know we're going to be talking about diving in between 2 continental plates later, but I did want to address this. And I think what happened with the death was wrong. I mean, I do think it's wrong, and I do think racism exists, and I am not for it in any bit. And I do think that people should be angry right now. It's hard to speak eloquently about this, but we've had these giant protests go on, and I completely understand. And they've turned into big riots here in the States. Has that happened in Australia?
No, it hasn't reached here, but it has addressed an issue that we have as well, because we have our own troubles. And I think some people are a bit angry because they're like, you're all getting upset about Black Lives Matter in the US and saying how unfair it is and how terrible it is, and raising your voices. But people don't necessarily raise their voices for the Black lives in Australia, because we have the Indigenous population, our Indigenous Australians. And there are very high numbers of people, Indigenous, like sort of the percentages, unfair percentages of people incarcerated. And then the deaths like in prison are very high as well. So I think the statistic I saw the other day, or the number I saw, was 400 deaths since 2009 in prison of Black lives here. And they're like, where was your voice then, sort of thing. So there's a little bit of anger around that. And so I think the message that people are trying to add to it is all Black Lives Matter. It's an issue across all countries. I think we can agree that white privilege exists. I 100% have experienced it myself, being in places and being put first because I'm white. And I'm like, no, this, like being in India and being like, they're like, oh, no, madam, you can basically, I could do what I want. And I'm like, no, it's not why do I get to do that? I'm not, it's weird. And I honestly, I have felt safe. Like I was in Kenya and I honestly felt fine and safe because I was like, I stand out. While I'm walking around, no one's going to let something happen to me. I really felt that. And it's true. I felt it was true. So I've seen it in action and I don't agree with it. I think all lives are precious. And I can't believe it's just such a surreal thing to see that one day, and I have quite a few friends across the US, to see that one day people are wearing, staying in their homes and trying to avoid each other. And, New York City's like, I am robot, like empty. And then the next day, they're burning cars in the streets. And you're like, guys, there's a pandemic on. Um, you know,
Yeah.
and we have to speak up, but I don't know about running around the streets together. That's
Right, right. I know this is a bit off topic right now.
oh, but it's very much the topic in the world and for any
Right,
traveler person,
right,
and looking
right.
at the future
And
of travel, you're like, I want to come back to the States. My cousin lives in Illinois and I love coming over, but you're like, is it okay for me to get there? Like, how am I going to, can I be
mhm.
safe there? That's real questions.
Yeah, and especially even having these goals of visiting all of these different countries, how how do you think what's going on today is going to affect your future travel?
Oh, I think that honestly, like, um, I sort of go in with an attitude of compassion and learning and openness and understanding. I've very, very rarely felt scared in places. I'm aware of, um, that I'm different and that things are done differently and things like that. But
Hmm.
I tend to, a lot of the places I've been, I've tended to know someone there or have made a contact or something. So that's a really nice way to go in. But
Hmm.
I believe in the best in people. And, I went to Uganda when Ebola was on, Ebola was
Uh-huh.
happening. But I mean, Africa's a big continent. And it's like I use the
Right.
example of Australia or the US, like when something's happening on one side of the country, for it to travel to the other side of the country, especially in Africa where there isn't as much plane travel and things like that.
Right.
Like
Right.
there was more chance of Ebola being in other countries around the world than it was of being in the opposite side of Africa. And I had people at the
Hmm.
highest security levels. I was there with a not-for-profit. So I was like,
Hmm.
surely they're not going to let me walk into this. And I was like, you can't let fear prevail. So
Hmm. Hmm.
the work to go and see Uganda, to go and see their work, to go and learn about what they were doing was to me more important. And I was not worried at all. I was there. I didn't, you know, I
Yeah.
felt comfortable. And, you have to be, like we were told, we had security briefings and all that sort of stuff. But, so I will come back to the US, but I just think it's, yeah, I mean, look, I'm fortunate to have ticked it off, so maybe it's not the biggest
Right.
rush. But
Right.
I love visiting people there. I love visiting my cousin, and it's just like, okay, well, what does that look like? Are
Uh-huh.
people going to be safe in terms of the illness, pandemic side of things, and are people going to be safe in terms of, I don't know, treating each other right?
Right. Right. It's a yeah, it's a different world out there.
Yeah.
Uh I'm just curious in the travel industry, do you think that people will need to show like proof of a vaccine to travel to other countries? Or do you think, like, how do you foresee the future of travel,
Mm.
as it relates to the pandemic?
I mean, look, there is no vaccine, and I think there's not going to be one for 12 months to 18 months. So, I mean, that's going to
Mhm.
be tricky. Like each country is dealing with it so differently. And, if, even for an example, I wanted to go to the UK, to England in October. My grandmother's turning 90, and I thought that was off the cards. But my auntie flew from Australia. She got stuck in Australia during the pandemic. She flew back 2 weeks ago into the UK, and currently there's no forced quarantine. So she
Really?
was, yeah, they opted to. They went home, straight home, and they've quarantined themselves and got like groceries delivered and all that stuff. But there's no
Hmm.
forced quarantine, and they're still having 300 deaths a day. Whereas we've
Wow.
had just over 100 deaths, absolute max in Australia,
Uh-huh.
and
Wow.
our borders are still locked. And if you fly in now, you would have to be quarantined in a hotel for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
So it depends. Like I think looking at that, the people will be like, well, I don't want to go to the UK. And the same with, unfortunately, the US. It's like, well, if you're not going to put in measures to protect us, you're not going to be high on my list of places to visit. So I think the
Mm-hmm.
way that countries communicate the things that they're still doing and communicate their rules, I guess that will encourage people to go places. But it's just, I mean, they're saying 2 to 3 years for it to get back to anywhere near what it was.
Right.
And even then, I think it's been a bit of a wake-up call that the scale and the rate at which we were traveling was intense, So perhaps road trips and other types of travel will, maybe there'll be a bit more of exploring your backyard or places by road for a while. Certainly that's what they're encouraging in Australia.
Right. They're encouraging the same here in the United States. And Peter Greenberg was just talking about the prevalence of upcoming road trips and doing RV and visiting national parks and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But something I think is really interesting is that over the next few years, as hopefully the pandemic slows down, this is now time that you could be working on certifications to maybe go do those really cool things out somewhere. This is a time when you can be doing the book work or laying down the groundwork to be more experienced, and you can work on that locally. As you can see, I am leading into our diving episode here.
Yeah.
And today we're going to be talking about diving in between two continental plates in Silfra, Iceland.
Yeah.
And I've not done this. I do have a dry suit certification. This is on my bucket list. A really close girlfriend of mine has done this and loved it. And you have done this experience. I think it's the only place you can dive in between two continental plates, correct?
Yeah. And it's the clearest water in the world. So it's pretty special, pretty unique. Do recommend it.
Well, can you describe the experience and where are these tectonic plates in Iceland?
Sure. Well, look, I'll probably give a little story about how it came about. We were actually going on a big round the world tour. My now husband and I, we were partners at the time, and we had 2 weddings. One was in the US, one was in the UK. So they were about 4 weeks apart. So obviously, logically, you've got to do a big trip. We wouldn't do 2 small trips. Why not just do a big trip? So
Correct.
we did. Yeah,
Yeah.
Why would you waste your time? So we did 7 weeks and we did 8 countries in that time. And actually, exactly at this time, so it was 2 years ago, we flew into Iceland on, I think, June 1st or 2nd. In 2018. And yeah, my husband is a diver for work. So he's a marine biologist and a diver, and he currently works at SeaWorld on the Gold Coast in Australia. So he dives for work like all the time. And so there's times where I would like to go diving for fun and, to go around the area, but, he kind of doesn't really want to on his days off. So we save diving now for trips, and try and include it as part of one of our trips. And so when we were going to that part of the world, Iceland was definitely on the list anyway to go and see. But yeah, when we heard it, he'd heard about Silfra, and it is definitely a bucket list. I think one of the top 10 dives or something for divers around the world. It was like, well, we got to include that. So, and it was around the time of his 30th. So that was his 30th present from his parents. And we were like, let's do it. So I got him to do the research because I was like, it's your thing. I was planning a 7-week trip. I'm like, it's your jam. You got to do it. So we had to do a dry suit course first.
Okay.
Neither of us were dry suit certified. Now, we could have done it there. There is definitely the option to do it when you get there, but we had like 4 days. So to do it, the day before would have been quite a lot. Also, you're doing a dry suit course in this freezing water, and then the next day you got to go and be in the freezing water again. I don't know if that would have gone down too well with me. So
How cold is the water?
And I'm going to do Celsius, so you might have to do the translation for me. It's 2 degrees Celsius.
All right. We are looking up the the translation. That's 35 degrees Fahrenheit. That is
so close to 0. Yeah, which I think is the same for both of us.
Right. It's cold.
Yeah. So pretty much freezing is what it is, and that was summer, by the way.
Yes. Have you ever done any kind of cold water diving before this?
No, it's funny actually. I was listening to your blackwater diving, which was fun. I listened to that episode, and it reminded me that I went blackwater rafting. In, in New Zealand.
And we have an episode on that.
Oh, there you go. I'll have to go listen.
Yeah.
Reminisce. Yeah. But that was
go check it out.
That was pretty cold. And the thing about when you do very cold water sport things is that whatever meal or drink you have afterwards is the best meal or drink you've ever had in your life. It was tomato soup and a bagel. And even the other night I was talking to my husband about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're having bagels. I was like, but the best bagel ever was after blackwater rafting because it's just so cold. I mean, and you're loving it while you're doing it, but right. You just kind of got to do it, don't you? So you are dressed appropriately, and we did the dry suit course actually in Sydney, Australia. So it was nice to do. Yeah, it was smart. But
Very smart.
It was really nice to do a course together too, because he's been diving since he was 16. So to do something where he was learning too, and obviously he picked up the skills quite quickly. But I've got good buoyancy, so that was quite good. Apparently I'm quite good at getting that, so that was good. But it was really nice. Did we do it over 2 days? Maybe not. I don't know. It felt like a long time, but it was good. The guy was really helpful too and lovely that we did the course with, and it was nice. It was nice in a way to separate those two experiences as well, I think, for me, who doesn't dive as much.
How many dives did you have approximately before you decided to dive Silfra?
This is the funny thing, right? Like, I've been diving for 5 years now. And at the time I had done about 14 dives, and 2 of those were in Dos Ojos in Mexico, so in Cisneros. 2 of them were dry suit dives. And then my next 2 dives were in Silfra, and like my husband's like, because I'm like, we don't dive enough and we should dive more, and he's like, yeah, but when you do dive, they're the best dives in the world, like, so I'm quality over quantity with my diving.
Okay. Yeah. So listeners out there, you can go to plan to do this dive and go get a little bit of experience. And you got some time to do it, before.
Yeah, you don't need 100 dives. No way. You need, I had about 15 dives. I'm very fortunate to have a very, very excellent dive buddy, but no, it's a pretty straightforward dive. Like, it's not technical. The most technical part of it is the dry suit. But that's, in a way, maybe that's a pro for me because I haven't been diving as much. I'm still new to it, so it doesn't feel super weird. For like some divers who've been diving a long time, putting the dry suit on is very strange because you're learning all these new skills, but I'm kind of refreshing my skills every time I do it anyway. So I always find going down the weirdest. And when we were going down in Silfra, they had to do like a buoyancy check, and just, the way you do the dry suit going down is a little bit different. And he'd sort of said a few things. So you've got all these things in your mind, like, do this, don't do that, do this. And I just had this thing like, oh my God, I'm not going to do it right. And my buoyancy's not going to be good. And he's going to tell me I can't do it. And then we've come all this way. So I'm just having this like freak out underneath the water while trying to focus on following his directions. And then I come up and he's like, okay. Damn it. I mean, it's also like my face is freezing and it feels like little needles are going into your cheeks. So there was a lot going on in that first, minute of the dive.
Right.
Not to scare anybody, just my own just my own diving.
I mean, but this is a big deal. You're diving in extremely cold weather or the cold water in between two tectonic plates in Iceland. I mean,
yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I can tell you that morning I was not feeling very good. I was quite nervous, and I'd had the other reason I was feeling quite anxious about it was I'd had a cold. I actually got sick. Yeah, I got sick in New York, and then we went on to Boston, and then on to UK. And even I remember the night before we flew out to Iceland, I was still just talking was draining my throat, and so I just felt like that little bit snuffly still. And fortunately, my husband Matt held out, but he ended up kind of getting sick after that, feeling quite coldy, fluey after. But, you can't really have cold. You can't take anything for it.
Right.
When you're going to do the dive. And, so I was just nervous that was going to impact me or, and again, we it's quite a bit of money and also – it's a big mission to get there. It's not something you just go, oh, well, we'll do it next weekend. So I just had that in my mind. And I don't really like to eat a lot before I went. So we had they to have some snacks and I was like, oh. But, I was fine. So that was, they were very nice at making me feel comfortable.
Yeah. So you're in Iceland, you're in a dry suit, you're descending down, you're feeling the cold on your face because your face isn't completely covered and parts of that is touching the water. What did you see?
Everything, because you can have up to whatever your eye visibility is, you can see that. So they say about 100 meters, which is
wow.
I don't know, and I'm so bad for the metric system. But so basically you can just see everything. And the thing that the difference with Silfra is, and it's just funny, sometimes you read some of the reviews and people are like, well, I didn't really see many animals. And you're like, did you not get the memo before you went? The animals don't really like it there either. We saw a few little tiny fish and we saw some birds on the surface, which was cool because you could see their little feet paddling. But other than that, no, it's kind of the cool thing was it looked like it's like you were floating through the moon, it was like going through a crater on the moon or something because you're just looking at the rock formations, the colors, the blue, the hues of the blue. So you just got these amazing gradients of blue going up as the depths change. And then towards the end, there's the algae. So there's these bright greens. And so you get the blues and the greens and the brown of the rocks. And so that's the interesting part. And because it's so clear, I know you are floating, you're in the water, but it feels like you're floating in air. There's nothing in front of you. It was just so clear.
Wow. I can only imagine being there. And you know what? Sometimes right now I just want to flee Earth and just want to go hop on that spaceship. But here's another way to just get away from it all. And
under the water is it's so peaceful. It's there's always that for me, that initial bit of getting in there, and then I think it's just I'm okay, I'm breathing. Yep, this is what we're doing. Okay, and then I'm in it. So It was really nice. And one of the great things as well was, our tour guide, Ants, where was he from? Estonia. He was Estonian, but living there. And he took photos for us, so we didn't have to worry at all. My husband did have a GoPro, but really didn't have to worry. And he took these photos, and we have all these awesome photos now that he took of us, and he would just hang upside down and take a photo of us or float around. And he's obviously just so second nature, but it was so lovely to have that. And we now have them blown up on our wall. We have 3 of them blown up. And so it's really nice to just always be able to go and look at those pictures.
So cool. That is so cool. And we will be sharing those photos on social media and on Experiences That You Should Have podcast. So please go check out the show notes later. Let's talk a little bit about logistics of making this happen. So you mentioned that you need a dry suit certification.
Yeah.
But before you get a dry suit certification, there's some other certifications you need. Can you elaborate?
Oh yeah, you got to have an open water. So you got to have your basic open water as to be able to do this course. To do this dive, it's only the dive is only to maximum 18 meters, but really they probably only take you to 12 meters. So you don't need an advanced. So I had the open water and that was fine. And then the dry suit, that was all we needed, I believe. So which was great.
And then open water certification, you've got some book work you need to do.
Yeah.
You've got pool work to do, and then you've got 4 checkout dives.
Yeah.
So all of you who are at home, you could do the book work at home right now, and you could find an instructor and go to a local lake or ocean if you're one of those lucky people that live next to the ocean, and you could work on getting these certifications and planning a really cool trip when the world dies down a little bit.
Yes.
So what about the cost, and also how many people were on this dive?
Yeah, that's a cool thing. There were only we actually went in 2 groups, so there were 5 of us there that day, and we only 5 of us or 7 of us. I can remember 5 very clearly. There was a couple from New Zealand, and then there was a guy who came with us, but they split us up. So there was only 3 with the 1 instructor, and then I think the others were 2 with the 1 instructor. So we had a lot of attention on us, and then we had 2 instructors and then an assistant. So she helped with us getting dressed. So we there's quite a bit of time to pick you up, and on the drive there that you talk, and then when you get there, they show you a map of the area. They even took us to a little lookout first to show us where we're going, and then explained around the area because you're going to Silfra National Park. So they explained all of that. And for Game of Thrones fans, there's the wall was from that national park. So I think people would know that. I don't watch it, so I don't know. I was like, oh, great. Yes, I can picture it, but cool.
I haven't seen it either.
But yeah, it was really cool to see the area. And it's kind of all marshy grassland, it looks like. And so they're like, yeah, it's over there. The fish is over there. We're going to go. And it's kind of, oh, okay. So you get dressed in this car park. There are little huts and stuff, but the lady luckily helped you because you're getting into this wetsuit, you're getting into the dry suit, you're putting on these gloves that make your hands look like lobster hands, like they separate your fingers, so they're kind of warmer. And once you got all that stuff on, you're in. So you do need the assistance. And then we walked out to the Fissure, and so you're like waddling out with all this gear on. Which, to be honest, is like one of the hardest parts for me is getting in and out. I have a bit of sore lower back, so sometimes I find having the tanks on and the belt and everything, my lower back is like, oh
yeah.
Especially afterwards when you're walking back and they try to help you, and I was, oh my God, I was just walking like a zombie. I was like, oh, but yeah, they support you to get there, and then it was just 3 of us, so it was good. We all did our buoyancy test, and then we went off, and
that's a good social distancing activity.
Yeah.
You don't have giant groups of people, and you're out there in just small group. And the cost, I mean, you're getting a lot of one-on-one attention. You're even having a photographer. How much did it cost? And for how many dives?
So it was 2 dives. The first dive was probably about, and that's dependent on how you guys are going. I think our first dive was about 32 minutes and our next dive was about 20 something minutes, because I think the first dive took a little longer to settle in and stuff, whereas the second dive you sort of go through a little bit quicker, but pretty much the same route on both dives, which was good because you get to, to be fair, it's not a lot of routes, but it was good to just kind of go back and see what you hadn't seen. But now I'm going to do the conversion, because I think it was about 500 Australian dollars, which is about $350 US for the 2 dives. Okay. And that,
that's really not bad for a bucket list dive.
It felt like a lot because I guess we were doing a lot on that trip, and obviously it's not, for us it was like the flights to Iceland, the accommodation, the car rental, so we were probably adding all those things up. But when we stopped and took, looked back and went, oh, wait a minute, $500 for 2 dives, that's including, $350 US, but they picked us up from the hotel, they took us there, yes, like you said, fully almost one-on-one attention, photos, usually it's a photo package, and they were very, very generous, and I was writing an article, so they did give me the photos, which was very generous. We did buy a t-shirt. We went to the shop and bought a t-shirt, but souvenir, but then the 2 dives and snacks, and then driving you back to your hotel. So that's a lot. In here, just for a dive down, we live near the water, just to do a dive at the Broadwater, it can be $130, Australian dollars, so like $90 US, and that's just kind of your standard ocean dive. So to do something really spectacular like that, it's not bad. Not bad at all.
No, that's not bad at all. And then how long did you stay in Iceland for?
We did a really short trip, so we were like 3.5 days, but we made a really nice itinerary. I was really happy with what we did. So we flew in, and that first day we went to the Blue Lagoon, which it's the famous hot pools, sort of natural hot springs with the white clay. And it's beautiful. And some people are like, oh, it's so popular and touristy. And you're like, well, it's for a reason.
it is beautiful.
They've done a good job. And it's kind of like set up like a spa type. You go in and you have your nice towel on and all that stuff. And they give you a drink. You have a drink included. And, just to preface that nothing in Iceland is cheap. So, but in saying that, we just come from New York as well, and London, and they're not cheap either. Like going out for a meal is not necessarily very cheap. So people go on about how Iceland's expensive. Well, we did a bus tour for a whole day on our last day, and I think we paid about, I'd say $60 US, like it was 80, like $55 US. It was $80, $90, and it was the whole day, and it took us around it's called the Golden Circle. So they go to these like waterfalls. You go to the Silfra National Park. You get to see where Parliament was first held, and beautiful, beautiful sights. And I was like, that's not bad. The car rental wasn't terrible. It's the accommodation isn't cheap, but we had Airbnb, and it still wasn't terrible. Like you were able to find something within the budget. There's an app called Happy Hour. No, it's got another name. It's like a happy hour app. Appy Hour. Happy Hour. Take off the H. Appy Hour. It's an app for happy hours, and so basically, but it's not like happy hour. It's like happy 6 hours. And all these bars are listed, and so you just go, like one might be like 6 to 8, and one might be 8 to 12, and one might be 7 to 9, and so it just basically brought the beer down to normal price. So instead of paying I'd say $15 US for a beer, you were paying $7 for a beer, which in Australia, that's kind of, for a pint, that's kind of standard. Beer's kind of expensive. So I think you might need to dig around a little, but of course, if you walk into the first restaurant you see, you might find it a bit pricey.
Right.
But,
and when talking about costs for the Silfra dive, did that include like a rental dry suit? Did you need to bring a dry suit? How did that work out?
Oh no, everything was included. All the gear was included. So
that is impressive.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. I mean, dry suits are not cheap.
No.
I mean, maybe a cheap dry suit is like $800.
Oh yeah.
But that's pretty cool. So include your reg, everything. Did you need to bring any gear for this?
No, we took our own masks, mask and snorkel. But we didn't take our own fins or anything. I think we just took our mask and snorkel, and that was it. Like Matt's got a bunch of gear. I don't have gear, but this our wetsuit wouldn't have been appropriate anyway. So no, they gave us everything. Like they assume, like I said, there were the people who two of the people on our trip were from New Zealand, so they had nothing with them. So the day before they'd done their dry suit course, and then the day after they did the Silfra. So, you don't anything.
And for our listeners out there, if you plan on doing a dry suit course at your own home or wherever you live and you've got a nearby dive shop, most of them will require for you to have your own dry suit to do the course. So it may be beneficial to go there and do the dry suit and be able to use a rental because it's not a common thing for dive shops just to rent out.
Oh, in Australia, ours did, like the one we did. I don't know if we paid. Yeah, I don't know if we paid extra for that or whatever. But I mean, maybe because in where you live, it is cold. Because where we live, there's not a lot of dry suit diving. Like down south, there is in Tasmania and maybe at the bottom of Western Australia. But even for us, it was a little warm on the day. So for us, they were included. I cannot remember the cost of the course, but
right. Well, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, here in Oregon, you have to supply your own dry suit.
Yeah,
at many places.
Pricey start.
Oh yes, it is. And so, just curious, who did you actually go through? Who did you book your Silfra expedition?
Yeah, we went through a company called Dive.is, so it's like dive.is. And like I said, my partner just did the research and looked into a few different ones, and there are a couple of different companies operating down there, but they just seem to be like the ones he felt quite comfortable with them. I think we even emailed them a couple, like back and forth a few times, asking some questions about it, and they were helpful. And we had to fill in like a form or maybe provide some ID or something like that kind of before we did it. They take it quite seriously. We probably had to put in our certification and stuff and like how many dives we'd done. But yeah, look, and the thing to say as well is that if you're not comfortable doing the dive or you're like not willing to do the dry suit course and all that sort of stuff, you can still experience Silfra because they have snorkeling. So people, while we were diving, were snorkeling along the top. So
now, do you think they could have seen the continental plates? Like, do you think it would have been a good experience for the snorkelers?
Yeah, I know. Actually, my in-laws, they totally copied us and like went the year after, basically copied our entire trip.
I love it.
But they ended up staying longer in Iceland, of course, like seeing more than us. So we're like, okay, fine. But they went to Silfra, and I don't think did they both do it or just his dad? But he did the snorkeling, yeah. And then I have a couple of friends who'd been before me, and they had done the snorkeling and said it was phenomenal. Like if you haven't done the dive, like I couldn't go and do the snorkel now because it just, for me, it was probably like a once in a lifetime thing,
Yeah.
because there's lots of other things to do in Iceland and other places. So I don't, it's not that I didn't love it. It's just that there's other things to do. But yeah, I think it would be difficult going and snorkeling now, because I'd be like, but there's so much more. but because it's so clear, they would have seen a lot. They would have seen a lot. So no, and that was popular. There were a lot more people doing that, maybe like 10 or 20 in the group. And they broke them up again, and then they sort of went along in a chain. But it's very, very popular.
And as far as preparing for the dive, do you have any tips for our listeners on maybe what to bring or how to prepare mentally?
Yeah, mentally, don't have a cold before you go. Add to your stress. Yeah, like it is cold, but you're dressed appropriately. Like just think about like when you go to this, if you've ever been to the snow, it's the same thing. If you've been to the mountains, like when you dress appropriately, it's not that bad. Obviously after a little while you start to feel it, but it's totally bearable. It's that initial shock, like when you jump in the pool, it's that initial like, oh, okay. And then you sort of adjust. Make sure you have the snacks. Make sure you get some snacks for after. Like you may not feel like eating but like a lot before, but make sure you have some snacks for after, because you will be hungry. Maybe plan your meal for after. Like we were fortunate, we didn't go too far from our Airbnb and found like a place, and we had a beautiful sort of traditional Icelandic stew. That was like a lamb stew, and so that was perfect to have like a hot soup. And like I said before, we were there in summer, and there were days like summer is still cold. We were still wearing long pants and coats. The least I wore was long pants and a t-shirt. It's cold, and so you're just wiped after. So really don't plan anything that day. So my brother had been to Iceland too, and he's like, and you can go to the museum, and you can go here, and you can go there. And I was like, man, I didn't even have the bandwidth and to think about it, but I just kind of knew as well that diving does take it out of me. So, and then the cold doubly takes it out of you. So we went home and just we napped for the afternoon and needed to do that. So, and then just make sure you pack for Iceland in general thermals, for underneath your clothes, because you will be cold. And, I was wearing hiking pants and it's not enough. So wearing thermals. We took our thermals. I need to do that. So having like beanie and gloves and thermals will help for getting around anyway, but certainly after the dive you want to be as rugged up and warm as possible.
Yeah. Well, these are some great tips. And also, did you notice a tipping culture while you were over there?
No. No. we didn't tip.
It's a very American thing for me to ask, right?
Yeah, no, but it is a thing, and I got into some heated conversations recently in Mexico about it, because I from my understanding and from my many visits and living in Mexico, it wasn't a thing, but because of a lot of American visitors, it has become so. But then there's other, it is important to ask, because like there's places like Nepal or India where they actually sort of sometimes ask you not to, because they don't want to create that. But there are certain settings where if you're in a group tour, they'll be like, okay, we'll tell you how much you need to give. That's the appropriate amount, and we'll do it like handed over. But no, I don't think we tipped at all. And I certainly wasn't in the mood to tip after paying, Like I had one meal. We had the most amazing hot dogs. There's this famous hot dog place. People line up for these hot dogs. Like even they've got a photo of Bill Clinton getting a hot dog there.
Really?
Yeah, they're just little. And even you can get them it's this thing from the service stations or from like the gas stations. Hot dogs are just this thing that they love having in Iceland, but this one place is famous for it. So you're cold and you're standing outside lining up this little hut for a hot dog. We're like, okay, we'll do it. But that was a really tasty meal. And then I went and had these fish and chips, because I was like, we're near the ocean. You should have fish and chips, and they were not good. And it was like
Oh.
$25 US, and I was like, seriously
Oh,
for
what a
that?
letdown.
So I definitely was not in the mood for tipping after that.
Right. Yeah.
But
Got it.
it's just not a thing, really. I didn't notice it. So
Yeah. So, anything else you'd like to add about diving or snorkeling, Silfra?
it's incredible. Like it really, the photos that we have from it, that they take me right back. It's the colors. I've never seen anything like it. I do have to point out there's a bit of to ruin the magic of it a little bit, but so you're diving and there's a photo and you'll probably use it of you're touching the continental plates.
Yes.
So you got your arms apart and it looks like you're about like 1.5 meters. Actually, it's kind of perfect for social distancing, but actually that's just a representation. The continental plates can be up to 4 kilometers wide, so you're between them, but they're still kind of far apart, so you're in the middle. So the fissure is narrow, and the fissure that you're in is narrow, but the continental plates are still a little distance apart. So that's
I didn't know that.
There you go. So it's but it is the only place that you can get between them. So that's still true. They're just not almost touching each other like you think they are. We'd probably be up for an earthquake if they were. So, but it's pretty funny. You're like, okay, well, I'll do it anyway. And so you got this photo, and if anybody asks, they're like, oh well, yes, of course, I'm touching both continents. Yeah, symbolic, very symbolic.
Okay, well, we're going to use the photo, but for those of you who have listened, you know.
There you go.
So I'm just curious, where to next when the world calms down?
Oh, well, that's, it's funny you said before, like, I've set this mission for myself in July last year. I've got 137 countries left to visit to reach my goal, which I had broken down to be about 20 countries a year. I said I want to do it by the time I'm 40. I'm currently 32. So I gave myself about 20 countries a year. And when you go to a place like Europe, that's you could do 11 countries in 30 days, easily. Easily.
Right.
I could probably do 30 countries in 30 days if I wanted to, but I would be very tired. So, I don't know. We went to Belize just before. We really wanted to do a dive there, but we just would have had to use up a whole day, actually. So that's definitely going back on the bucket list, get back to Belize and do the Blue Hole. We were on Kai Kolka and did a snorkel, which was amazing. But so it was really nice. I guess I was very fortunate to have that at the start of March. So I had my little travel dose. But next on the list, I don't know. I really this is just maybe want to visit family. So I want to get back to the UK or to the US and see my cousin. And then, I don't know. We actually really want to go diving in Papua New Guinea. And because of the way the world is at the moment, it might be the case that we are doing more local travel. So Papua New Guinea is only 3 hours from us.
Okay.
By flight. It's an island in the South Pacific. A very interesting war history. A good friend of mine
drove there last year. I'll have to connect you.
Oh, absolutely stunning. Like we flew over it and it just absolutely breathtaking. So beautiful country. I'd love to get back again. I went there for hiking. Sorry, I've forgotten. The next one on our list is shark diving, cage diving in Adelaide.
Oh, where?
Yeah, down in Port Lincoln.
Very cool.
Yeah, so because of the whole domestic travel thing, they're trying to really encourage that. Well, we've pushed that trip back a few years because we've had overseas travel to do, and so it's like, well, since we're going to have to be at home a lot this year, why don't we go do the cage dive down there? So,
is it great whites?
Yeah, it's a place called Port Lincoln, and you can either do the 1-day trip or you can do like a 3 to 4 day or a 5 day liverboard, and that's with the drop cage. So we actually are looking more at that one, so that we could be in the drop cage, which means I have to do my advance before I go. So
I did a liverboard with a drop cage, but off of Guadalupe, Mexico.
I heard that.
Yeah, and that was great.
Yeah. So fingers
Do they
crossed.
allow chumming there?
I don't know. I was listening to that on that podcast and I wondered because, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting to find out.
Yeah, well, I will certainly report back. And my husband's colleague used to actually do some work on the boat, so she's kind of got an in for us with the company. So we'll probably go with that one. But the funny thing and the ironic thing about my husband being a diver is that he also gets seasick. So pretty awful seasickness. So he's just not sure if he wants to do the 3 or 4 day one or whether he wants to do the 1 day one because that crossing is pretty intense.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll see. I'm up for it. I'm kind of like, well, if you're going to go do it, you do it properly.
Right.
But if he's going to be sick the whole time, I don't really fancy paying thousands of dollars to watch him throw up.
No.
As well as having him feel terrible, that would be quite bad.
Right. Totally.
But I will report back. I'll let you know what we end up doing. So
please, I can't wait to hear. Well, everybody listening, please go check out the Lovely Travels podcast. And we'd love to have you back on the show and talk about some really cool new experiences around the world.
Thank you, Gail. And I'm going to have to get you onto my podcast. We'll be podcast buddies.
I love it. Well, you just say the date and I will be there.
Awesome.
Thank you again for sharing your experience, and until the next adventure.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Experiences You Should Have podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast and please tell someone about the show. I know it's a travel show, and now's the time to start planning. Maybe these are big trips you're going to do in 2 years or 3 years, but now's the time you can start saving or getting those certifications or that dry suit certification. And now's a great time to be in planning mode, doing what you can do at home so you can go do those cool things around the world. So please follow us on Instagram, Experiences Podcast, and check out the show notes on experiencesyoushouldhave.com. And also, again, please check out Emma's podcast, Lovely Travels Podcast, and her site is lovelytravels.com. So until the next adventure.